Hi, and welcome to the Handbag Designer 101 podcast with your host, Emily Blumenthal, handbag designer expert and handbag fairy godmother, where we cover everything about handbags from making, marketing, designing, and talking to handbag designers and industry experts about what it takes to make a successful handbag. Welcome, Beth Goldstein, to the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. Beth is the executive director and industry analyst of footwear and accessories at Circana. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
I mean, your title precedes you, so let's be honest. It's hearty and it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. So what is Circana? What is it? What makes it so interesting and why is it so important?
So great question.
Thank you.
Circana as a company is about 6 months old, actually. You may have heard, obviously, we've worked together for a long time, and I've been at NPD for a very long time. And NPD and IRI merged to form Circana. So NPD was a longstanding market insights firm in the categories of general merchandise. So fashion categories, tech, toys, beauty, categories like that. Whereas IRI was a research company and one of the most well-known research companies and insights companies in the food and grocery and consumer packaged goods industry.
Right.
So we've merged and rebranded as Circana. And now we've got the complete view of almost $3 trillion in consumer spending across all of those industries. And of course, now we know people are paying more for their food. They're paying more for their gas. They're, spending more for just typical household items. So it really helps to have that broader knowledge of what the consumer is spending on to really help us provide context and understand why the trends might be as they are in our industries.
You should say that. And I'm so excited. I could talk about this genuinely all day about people paying more for things. So that is a ripple effect going all the way. I mean, during the pandemic, that was because there were shipping problems and boats getting blocked. And then as a result of the boats being blocked, deliveries were delayed. And therefore, by the time the merchandise showed up, there was a glut of what was last season's merchandise. And therefore, it created this backlog of, okay, now we have last season. Now we have to put that season on discount or promotion. And now we have the new stuff coming. And then the cycle continued.
Right.
What other factors do you think have led to things being more expensive? Like, did cows get more expensive one day? Do they now have iPads and therefore leather's more expensive? Like, what's your take on the why?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of what you mentioned. It's just been generally, the ripple effects of cost increasing in every aspect of the chain, the supply chain across all categories. And it has gotten better. And we definitely see that, you read about this too, about inflation rates have come down, but to the consumer, they're still increasing. So the rate of growth has slowed, but prices are still increasing across a number of industries and categories. So to that consumer, they still are seeing their prices going up. Now, maybe they didn't go up as much as they went up last year, but it's still up and, they're still feeling it.
I mean, one of the key points are the articles that have come out regarding the increase of a Chanel bag.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think about that? And, the Chanel customer, I mean, it's inelastic. They will continue to shop that product regardless of if it goes up 10%, 20%, 60%. It's insane. There's actually that clip which people have been showing from Sex and the City where Samantha was going to get the Hermes bag.
Mm-hmm.
And when the person said it'll be $4,000 and she said, for a bag? Now it's like, oh, put a zero in front of that one right there. You know, people don't even bat an eye.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really fascinating because you have this dichotomy of what's happening. I mean, people, struggling with just everyday costs of goods going up. And then you've got, the luxury end. And as a whole, we have seen the luxury side of things slow down, but it's twofold. It's really, that extreme high end. So the Chanel's and the Hermes and the brands that play in that quiet luxury category that's been, talked about so much this year. 𝐉𝐸, the Row, those are definitely holding their own. And that customer isn't feeling the pinch as much. But then you look at, I mean, this is funny to say, but the lower end of the designer spectrum and the brands that tend to be more accessible or more aspirational that, the consumer will stretch themselves to purchase. That's where we've seen the softness, because that consumer right now is the one that can't necessarily stretch, whereas the consumer that's already buying, the Chanel, etc., is doing okay.
What do you think? And we'll get into where things are with handbags and your thoughts and professional opinions on, well, it's not even an opinion. It's extrapolated from facts. Let me clarify that. What do you think in terms of how product, obviously specifically handbags, are sold at retail? Because you have the department stores like a Saks, like a 𝐉𝐸, like a Bergdorf's, and I've walked those stores. They carry sometimes the same merchandise that's sold at a Nordstrom, that's sold at a Bloomingdale's. How do you think this discerning customer is able to, because again, for designers who aspire to be in those stores and designers that are currently, how are they able to define those price points? And from a research perspective, how do you think that impacts overall sales?
Yeah. I mean, certainly there is some differentiation between those retailers based on the products that they carry, but in some ways, they're becoming a little bit more homogeneous as well with, you can find some of the same things. So retailers really are focused on trying to differentiate themselves from their competitors. And that's where a lot of these newer emerging brands like, you're working with and you're always talking about can really help. And the retailers that are willing to kind of take that chance and do something new and merchandise in a new way, are the ones that are going to stand out. But it's not always just about price point, right? I mean, if you look at a Nordstrom, they have in all of their departments, really, they carry, they'll have the designer, but then they'll go down into the contemporary and even a little bit more into like, the bridge and the better, for using those official classification terms.
Yep.
But it's more about the brand, the aesthetic or the personality, or, that what that brand means or says and how it aligns with, their consumer from, some maybe the more mainstream to the designer. So price point's one aspect of it, but, I think some retailers are starting to shake that up a bit.
I had a major contemporary department store speak to me and ask me, do I have any designers that I can recommend to them? And this is, at a quote unquote affordable price point. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, we are so desperate for newness that we are going on to other department stores' websites to see if we can pull some talent from there, which wasn't surprising, but it was kind of, I was surprised to hear him ask me, because the designers with whom I work, I don't think have the capacity at that point to sell a Macy's or somebody like that, just because the cost of doing business, of getting in those stores, is just so high.
Right. Yeah. And it's also hard to, as the business has slowed, where some of the major brands that were such big drivers of sales 10, 12 years ago, it's hard to find even, those that are taking a chance on some of these more emerging designers. It's hard to replace that volume. So, the business is softer, then the retailers become a little bit more conservative, and then it's just kind of a vicious cycle. So,
yeah. I mean, what happened with Michael Kors, I think it was like 2016, where they flooded the market. It really killed, I don't want to say killed the business for everyone, but it certainly made it a lot more complicated for anybody who was trying to break in. Do you still see that impact in people trying to recover? Because there's still a lot of Michael Kors out there, cold hard facts.
Yeah. I mean, the popularity of the brand and the, skyrocketing sales, it had an overall halo on the entire industry. It kind of made the handbag category exciting, but then, it just got too oversaturated, like you mentioned, and, has struggled to come back from that ever since. And there are other brands that were in that situation as well, maybe not to the same scale, and everybody has sort of tried to reinvent, but some of that has meant pulling back. from the major department store players and focusing on direct consumer. And not all of that, I mean, that can be a good strategy, but it doesn't mean that all of that volume is then going to transfer. So, it is very tough, and it's got to really always be evolving, and really the number one focus needs to be the long-term health of the brand. And that's hard, especially when you are a publicly owned company and you need to, achieve the short-term results.
Right.
But, in the long run, it's those that really focus more on the brand protection and kind of keeping that supply and demand relationship in check that come out ahead.
So I want to talk a little bit about Circana because we're already diving in. Now, Circana is what you do, and I would love to talk a little bit about how you work with retail, how you pull your data, what that data is used for, and what can we do with this incredible information that you're going to share. I mean, granted, you can only share with us so much,
right?
But what you're sharing it's really helpful as a designer and as a brand, I think, from all levels, because what you're able to pull is really, it's nuggets of gold in terms of how to build out your business and to hit those 4 Ps, price, product, promotion, and placement, and really get a deeper understanding of what the customer is, what the thresholds are, what the sweet spots are for price point, where the opportunities lie in terms of silhouettes. Exactly. I think all that information is really, really interesting. So if you could speak to a little bit about what all this is about, I think we'd all be enlightened.
Yeah. So we have different data sources, and that will vary by industry and by geography. But for example, for the fashion and accessories categories, we've got a few main sources. So one is a retail tracking service. And that is, we've got partnerships with retailers where they are sending us their data, mostly on a weekly basis. And we are coding that up and compiling it into, data sets where we can see brand, category, item level, attribute selling. And then we work with clients, both on the retail side and on the manufacturing side, to help them interpret that data and understand what it means for their business. Now, we do that differently with retailers and manufacturers. So the retailers, in exchange for partnering with us and sharing their data, they get certain reporting back.
Do they ever color their information for you, like voting, puffing up certain things just to make them look better? Just out of curiosity.
No, it's data feeds that come in from their point of sale systems.
So it's the same Monday numbers that they get, you get.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, we may compile it up differently, and we do not ever share with other retailers. So the retailers will get reports back on their business comparative to other retailers as a whole grouping. So we are never exposing any one retailer's data to anyone but that retailer. And to manufacturers, they never see one retailer's data either, unless there is a special partnership that has been established and the retailer has given permission. So retailer confidentiality is very important. We wouldn't have our business without that. So the manufacturers can purchase the data, and we work with them to help them. And they can do that in a number of different ways. If they've got bigger insights groups and want to mine through data, they can buy databases, which we help them use, or they can buy reporting or, certain ad hoc things. We have other data sources as well, also, that they are more consumer based. So in some industries, we have consumer surveys that we do that are on a regular basis, asking consumers what they're buying and where and why, and what was the price and what was the category. And we compile that up to a total market view. In accessories, our consumer panel is actually receipt based. So this is something new that we actually just launched this year for accessories, that we get our consumer data through actual receipts that are submitted from our consumer panel. It's a large consumer panel. And so it's consumer in data in that it comes from a subset of consumers, and we use that to project up to the total market, but it's very accurate information. So instead of asking someone to remember and report on everything that they bought, we actually have the information from the receipt.
Is there anything D2C, direct to consumer, that you're able to pull?
So direct to consumer, we would get those receipts. So that's
only from the manufacturer.
We don't get it from the manufacturer, be from that consumer that's on our panel. So if I bought a bag at a Coach store or Coach.com and I'm submitting my receipts, we would see that. So in that more consumer-based service, we have the direct to consumer. In the retail tracking piece, we're mostly covering the wholesale space. We are working, though, to start to include direct to consumer. And that involves working with, the manufacturers to kind of get them, on board. So that's an ongoing project, but that's important because that's obviously becoming a larger piece of the business.
So in terms of whatever findings you are able to share with us, that would be really exciting. Like who the top players still are, what are some of the new people that you see coming? What other silhouettes do you think that are gaining momentum, which are on their way out? I always go back to the clutch, which I have a love-hate relationship with. I know crossbody is still very strong. A tote will never go away. Like tried and true silhouettes that people should constantly always have part of their assortment, things like that. Whatever you can share, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So we do see, the business has been soft. I mean, there are pockets of growth and, there's a lot of emerging players and direct-to-consumer brands that are doing well. But overall, from our checkout tracking, which is the consumer-based tracking, we see that, handbag sales are down about 14% this year so far. So year to date, January. Actually, that's through August. But units are flat, which is actually an improvement. So we are seeing some declines now in prices after seeing a couple of years of increases in prices. So some of that is increased promotion. Some of that is just mix shift. So that's an interesting one. So you start to see the business migrating from maybe the satchel or the tote bag to some of the smaller crossbodies and whatever you want to call them, fanny packs, belt bags, sling, chest.
Right.
The impact that Lululemon has had on the industry is actually...
Oh my God, on that one bag. Talk about a ripple effect.
Exactly. So, a lot of the major brands in the industry may not want to hear it, but, they are competing with this $48 price point belt bag that consumers are buying because, it serves the purpose and, that can be their everyday bag now. So there's definitely a shift in kind of what consumers are looking for. I know you and Nancy were talking about hands-free is still very important, multiple ways to wear. I mean, like you said, a tote silhouette is never going to go away, but we have definitely seen some shift away from totes into crossbodies, into backpacks. So,
what do you think about the convertible concept? I know overall customers search for convertible bags, but I think they do much better at a retail or in a venue where they can have an explanation because customers overall typically lack the foresight or wherewithal to figure out how to use a bag that's multifunctional.
Yeah, no, it's still very important. And we do see multifunctional bags growing. But actually, I think that's where almost you want to touch and feel and try it out, but then, in a retail environment, it's very hard to explain. Right. Like maybe if you have your own shop, that's one thing, but that's something that needs to, and we talk about this in footwear as well, as function has become in features and the benefits and the waterproofing and the comfort features and, all needs to be explained to the consumer. But when your shoe is sitting there on a table in a department store, that's hard to do that. Right. So in one way there, being online or having your own retail does really allow you to tell your story much more clearly.
Right. Or to have the social media impact of brands with fans to create your own channel to tell the story, like Base Handbags, BEIS, which that is a phenomenal story.
Yep.
Came out of nowhere. And now I know their strategy was very specific to grow on their own social, grow on their own platform, and then be very thoughtful with expansion. And of course, they went straight to Nordstrom.
Yep, that's where it's meant to go. Yeah.
Exactly. But, when you look at the newness and the innovation, I don't see anything so groundbreaking. But when you see it, how it's sold and the thoughtfulness and then the explanation of the unique selling points and how it opens. And look, we have a bag for dirty laundry, and it says dirty laundry, those key points, which bring people in and then get more following.
If you ever wanted to start a handbag line and didn't know where to start, this is for you.
Living proof that independent designers can make it big.
Emily Blumenthal is one prime example.
If you had dreams of becoming a handbag designer and didn't know where to start, this is for you. If you have a handbag brand and are in need of strategy and direction, this is for you. I'm Emily Blumenthal, handbag fairy godmother and handbag designer expert, and this is Handbag Designer 101, the masterclass. Over the next 10 classes, I will break down everything you need to know how to make, market, and manufacture a handbag. Broken down for you that you'll not only skip steps in that handbag building process, but also save money in that learning curve. For the past 20 years, I've been teaching at the top fashion universities in New York City, created the Handbag Awards, and also the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. I'm going to show you like I have countless brands from sketch to sample to shelf, whether you're just starting out and don't know where to begin, or even if you have a handbag line and just need some strategic direction, the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass is just for you. So let's get started, and you will be the creator of the next it bag. Join me, Emily Blumenthal, with the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass.
Function has just become much more important over, fashion is also important, obviously, but, the function has become basically an element of the fashion. So everybody can, you want different pockets because, all the things you don't necessarily need a huge bag, right? But you need the pockets for the phone and whatever else you're carrying and the water bottle, which everybody's carrying around. So
what do you think about the fact, just going back to base handbags? Funny enough, I was one of the people who pronounced it incorrectly for a long time until I was watching Shay Mitchell give the explanation. And my base bag. I'm like, what? Huh? What? Oh, okay. It's pronounced base. Do you think, and Terry Egan's has written several books, who was the former fashion editor of the Wall Street Journal. She wrote a book about the end of fashion. And then I forgot the name of her subsequent book about killing the runway or something, just about like the power of celebrity taking over. And because they already have that preset vehicle to sell. Do you see that in terms of, I don't even know if this is tracked, but like that celeb impact in terms of being able to sell a new product? Is that something that you follow in terms of products coming in?
We don't really, we track the increase in the use, obviously, of social media, but it's not a one size fits all, or sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it depends on how, and the authenticity is super important, right? Consumers are getting smarter to the fact that, when something's sponsored or paid, it's not as authentic. So, it does vary, but there are certainly celebrities out there that seem to be able to, really drive business with whatever they do.
I probably interrupted you. You were talking about silhouettes coming in and out.
Yeah.
So if we can continue just talking about that and where some opportunities lie. And I know the last time we spoke, you said that there was definitely a lack of newness, of new shapes, new sizes, new products coming in, and how that could be considered an opportunity.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of the silhouettes, the crossbody's the biggest, followed by the shoulder bags and the tote bags. But we've seen some small silhouettes continuing to grow. Like you were talking in one of the other episodes, I think it was probably with Nancy as well, on clutches. So we did clutches last year, had a good year because people got back to going to social occasions. It's generally a small category, and their convertibility is important as well, because sometimes maybe you want to hold in your hand, but then sometimes you want a chain or a strap.
It has to come with a strap.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always tell people, like, give the option, put it on the inside, open it up, put it there, have it come out one way.
Because the clutch, it looks nice when you're clutching it, but when you're at that cocktail party and you've got your little plate of appetizers and your drink, it doesn't work, right? So the function is definitely
right.
Backpacks have really grown as really the new commuter work tote. So, there definitely have been some emerging silhouettes.
We were talking how you had said the last time we spoke about the lack of new shapes coming in that you track and how that could be perceived an opportunity.
Right. So in terms of, innovation and newness, it's a tricky proposition because we need newness, we need excitement to get consumers, to really build up that demand. But of course, there are icons that are out there that you want to protect and maybe continue to keep out there. And maybe it's really about managing that. So, many brands have really deep archives at this point, and, every once in a while dipping back into them to bring something out that feels fresh and new, or evolving it a little bit with, whether it's different trimmings or, colorations, a little bit more function than it may have had the first time around because that wasn't as important at that time. So, it's important to protect those bestsellers, but make sure that they're not getting too ubiquitous, because then the demand, then ultimately, they start to get, not so exciting anymore. But yeah, innovation is important, and starting to see some new shapes. It's funny, one thing that I think I haven't seen a lot of in years now, and you're starting to see and looks a little new, is more of like the north-south silhouette versus the east-west. I love a north-south.
That's so funny. We had interviewed 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧, the brand that had done a collab with Michael Kors, I think like a year or so ago. And they had said, it's two very incredible women, and said that from their call with Michael Kors, when he called them and they had their first Zoom, how he complimented them on their north-south bag. And like the pair of them were like, huh? And I'm like, oh, there is a deficit of north-south bags. And I wish people would bring them back. That's my most favorite shape.
That looks so great. Yeah, and you're starting to see, more interesting shapes. I saw an article just, in one of the trend, maybe it was Who, What, Where. They're talking about, all these bags on Amazon that look like designer bags. Maybe they don't feel like them when you actually get them into your hand, but from an innovation and a shape perspective, there is some interesting things out there. It's just a matter of, getting that to the consumer and having, retailers take the chance.
Yeah. I had spoken to a friend colleague who was at one of those brands and had said, like, even with a Betsy Johnson bag, how the resale value of those item-based bags was stronger than how much people would pay for them up front. And the cost of making them is so high because the labor on those bags is considerable.
Right.
So things to take into consideration.
Yeah. The novelty piece is interesting. That has, done well. Kate Spade, obviously, that's a piece of their business, and it really is. If you hit that emotion and touch on something that is important to consumers and culturally relevant, probably not going to be huge business, but it at least again, that can be a way, like a collaboration, to provide buzz for the brand and just overall halo effect.
You had mentioned a couple things. One, novelty bags. Do you think as a result of the pandemic, this idea of a cool, innovative, fun bag truly stems from the fact that handbags took such a hit during COVID? Nobody needed them, truly. Right. That after the fact, people are like, I need something fun. I need something cool, innovative, all of that.
Yeah, it's funny. During the pandemic, I heard a lot of talk about, okay, we need washable bags and antimicrobial fabrics. And that is a solution in search of a problem. It became clear pretty quickly that we were not getting sick from our bags, No. But yes, I think it stems from the fact that we were just hermits for a while, and we've come out of it with wanting to express ourselves a little bit more. And that may be, to one more extremes to certain people, and other people want to do a little, like take Crocs and the gibbets. And, that idea can translate to handbags as well. And Coach has done a lot of this with, offering the personalization options. So just being able to individualize and personalize or customize an item to your taste to allow you to express yourself, that has been definitely something that we've seen, and we see it across industries. So I mentioned footwear, but in beauty, that's been a really big factor. And I think the handbag industry could definitely take some lessons from the beauty industry, just in general. Beauty beyond just benefiting from the fact that we have emerged from our, cocoons, it's just the ideas of expressing oneself, innovation in that industry, disruption, the power of social media, and then the product, you mentioned it earlier, just being able to, in beauty, you see all these demos and the testimonials. In bags, that's important too. Like, look at this bag and what I can do with it, what I can put in it, and all of that. So I think there are definitely some parallels.
Couple more points that I want to make sure we cover. One, you had mentioned anchor bags, anchor pieces, or basically the hero bag of a collection.
Right.
If your customer is coming back over and over to the same one bag. This goes for any industry. Like what Balenciaga did with the motorcycle bag. That's my favorite case study, that it came out with bigger hardware. It was bigger. It was a different color. It was neon. It was, all of a sudden it was patchwork. Like to continuously iterate that one product to get people to want to keep coming back. Like if you have a loyal customer, don't miss that opportunity. And I think from a research standpoint, that's just as important to see that kind of trend.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at like Marc Jacobs is doing that, with the snapshot camera bag and with the traveler totes, different fabrications, different sizes, different colors. And that makes a really great presentation in store as well. It really draws you in. And then of course it keeps you coming back because you might have the black one because you bought that one because it was more practical, the most practical, but you might come back with a different, to buy one with a different fabrication or color or strap.
Exactly. If we could talk a little bit about eco-friendly sustainability, how is that playing into the data that you're collecting? Clearly, it's a trend. Clearly, people care. Do people care enough in terms of that cost-benefit analysis of, Gen Z theoretically cares more. They ask more questions. They look, they research, they check transparency. Is this something that you think is truly on the rise for handbag brands, or are they trying to make sure, let me at least check the box. Let me have one bag to be part of my collection just to make sure that if anybody asks, I've got one, like what Coach did with 𝐀𝐞𝐬𝐢𝐬, which was so clever of taking all those old bags and then refashioning them into a patchwork new limited edition bag. I mean, that's, to me, I was like, thank God someone did that. I was waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, it's important. And when we survey consumers, it's increasingly important. You get less enthusiasm when you ask, would you pay more? It's not, as consumers are becoming more educated about the subject, it's not only about the materials, it's also about the production and the development and the back end and the energy and the water usage. And, so that's all. It's like a 360-degree process, but that's hard to communicate, right? The easiest thing to communicate is this is made with recyclable, with recycled water bottles or whatever. So I think that it's hard to quantify the ROI now, but it's where the industry, the fashion industry as a whole, has to move, because it's clear that the impacts of fashion to the environment are increasingly negative. That's becoming more well known, and we have to be doing better to stop just putting all this waste out there. So either reusing that waste. I know nobody wants to hear this, but producing less and selling less. It's interesting. That's kind of like the 𝐃𝐞𝐬𝐬.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Motto, fewer, better things. And that's the kind of what we need to do. So I think it kind of does suggest that we might end up on this kind of continued downturn, but that at some point that kind of becomes the new level and we're just consuming less as, human beings. I mean, I think we're all kind of trying to maybe simplify a little bit. And I definitely find myself thinking twice when I want to buy something now, more, do I really need this? Do I want another one of these? But I love the idea of, of all of the reusing of scraps or, just trying for zero waste. And we see a lot of brands making these pledges now for zero waste, the, zero carbon footprint. I do think it's important. And while it's hard to quantify now, if we don't move in that direction, we're going to be in big trouble, in a number of years.
I want to add on to that as quote unquote vegan leather versus leather on sales. But side note, I wish there was a method or something with Amazon that they could collect the boxes they ship in, because honestly, the amount of boxes, I mean, I can make a bag out of boxes. I can make a house out of those boxes in itself. But your take on consumer behavior on vegan leather versus actual leather and sales and sweet spot of price points, what have you found?
Yeah, I mean, I think leather obviously is still, I mean, I think consumers are open to other materials now, and vegan leather, that could be misleading, right? I mean, many brands are doing it well and, are really, but vegan leather in many cases, that's become a term that's being used for just like plastic, basically.
Honestly, it was PVC, now it's PU, but honey, PU is still not vegan. Like, it's just not.
Right. So, yeah, I think consumers are definitely more open to it, but the vast majority probably are, still focused on leather. But again, that will, with education, that can be changed. But there are, brands that are working with leather in ways that are better than they might have been in the past. I know you had a sponsor, right? It was like 𝐃𝐞𝐬𝐧, like these plant-based leathers, I think is really interesting opportunity because those are really leather-like.
Right. But I know like Myco, MYCO, the mushroom leather company, I know they couldn't scale it.
Yeah.
So
that's trouble.
It's a problem because if you can't even have economies of scale when creating these new materials, then it becomes prohibitive of people to be using them. I mean, I did a TikTok of like a fruit salad of companies that have done bags out of those materials. And I reached out to, I don't remember if it was there's Banana Tex, there's one that's made out of orange peels, there's one made out of their buttons that are made out of potatoes.
Yeah.
I reached out to them and they are struggling with how to use it and what to do with it. Like, it's great that it exists, but the comma, then what?
Right.
Like all those accolades mean nothing if you can't utilize the product and you can't scale it for people to use.
Right.
Two more things. Sweet spot of price points. What have you found in terms of trends of that?
We've seen prices inching up, and it's crazy because, I mean, you look at things like the Uniqlo bag, the shoulder bag, that's $20. And that's, very buzzy right now. And it's a great little bag, I have to say. Yeah. And then you've got all the way up to designer. So, I think consumers are picking and choosing, not necessarily based on price, but we generally see the $200 to $300 range is going to be, that bulk. But of course, it's such a broad range. It's hard to just pick a sweet spot.
Do you cover collaborations? Does that ever tie into any of your data?
It depends. We will get some data on it if they're selling in, the retailers that we're tracking. I think collaborations are a good strategy. I mean, they're not generally going to be what generates the most revenue, but I think they're important from a consumer acquisition standpoint, from a marketing buzz standpoint, and can be good, additions just to the overall strategy.
Is there any other key points that you would like to leave us with for moving forward for handbags industry and so forth? I'm sure you've got some lasting points that will keep us on our toes.
Yeah. One thing is about the age, and I think I mentioned this when we met with your students, that some of the survey work we did shows that regular handbag usage for activities aside from work and school, because when someone's going to work and school, they are most likely taking a bag, but more handbag usage for social activities is much lower for younger consumers, for that 18 to 34 age group versus the 35 plus. So I think that's just something that as an industry we need to take note of. And a lot of the things that we're talking about today are ways that we can re-engage, with the innovation, and potentially some of this new materials or sustainability and just, taking more chances at retail. The function, can really get back that age group, but it's also important just to understand what that age group is carrying. I mean, they're more likely to, when they are carrying, for it to be a small sling or crossbody or chest bag or something like that. So we've got to kind of lean into those new priorities.
Can I ask you, do you see denim sales on the rise? Do you track denim sales?
Yeah.
For denim sales for that age group significantly higher than it used to be?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the numbers there.
The only reason why I'm asking is because, I had a handbag researcher, a handbag historian on, which was so fascinating. Oh my God, I can't wait for that one to come out. But speaking to, and I know this just based on my own research, that the evolution of what a handbag represented in class and so forth, and that when the pocket was created, how that was like a ripple effect of independence and hands-free. And that was the first time that women were able to be on their own and without less to worry about. And I can only say personally from the spawn I've created that, that even in the summer, jeans were being worn. And I'm like, it's so hot. Why don't you wear a cute dress? And it's like, no, I need the pockets. So that whole construct of having, there is no such thing as a denim jean that is off trend at this point.
Right. And, the styles, obviously skinny is still a big piece of the market, but more wide leg, and that's something that's come out of the pandemic, more wide leg, flowy, high waisted, for more comfort. So that's there. That is actually, there's newness in denim, even though some of these silhouettes aren't necessarily new. They've been dormant for so long that they seem like there's newness. So
it's new to them. It ain't new to us, but
exactly. But it's, like it.
I know.
One other thing is you kind of mentioned the handbag and the status, and one of the things that I've said over the years is that we've seen the sneaker business kind of take over that distinction as the status item. So not that the handbag can't be anymore, and it is to many people still, but I think, the sneaker kind of came in and took that over a little bit.
Well, I think there's plenty of opportunities here. And I believe you've shown us a lot of places where, as designers, as brands, where we can grow and what we can make changes and really have an impact. So Beth Goldstein from Circana, thank you so very much for being with us. How can we follow you and those nuggets of information? Because I know you are active on the Twitter, on the X.
Yeah, well, I know. I feel like less so lately. Sure, you can find me on the X, I guess if that's what we're calling me. Calling it. I think it's BL Goldstein 0 there. And then obviously on LinkedIn, Beth Goldstein, Circana.com is our website. You can email me at .goldstein@circana.com. So yeah, it's different ways.
Thank you so much. We are absolutely going to have you back for a subsequent trend update for perhaps the quarters to come.
Sounds great.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure having you. Thanks so much.
Very much.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and follow us on every single platform at Handbag Designer. Thanks so much. See you next time.